Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Really looking forward to talking to this man. I've known him for well over 20 years. A distinguished career as a trainer, multiple graded stakes winner, including Victory Gallop in the 1998 Belmont Stakes. He's the president and racing operations guru, I think, of WinStar Farm. Had the Triple Crown winner last year, have Improbable this year coming into the Preakness. He is Elliot Walden. Elliot, thanks for being on.
No problem, Kenny. Happy to talk to you.
And I tell you, people are happy that you guys are going to be in the Preakness. It's essentially the same ownership, pretty close to the same ownership as with Justify. And, of course, you got the Baffert Smith coming in. And that's a great storyline for racing with all that's gone on to have Improbable running in this Preakness. How do you like his chances?
I like him. I'm excited about it. He's came out of the Kentucky Derby in good shape, and saw him do a little piece of work this week, and he looks good.
You know how it is coming out of the Derby. We were talking about this earlier in the show. I mean, it's such a trying test. I guess just to have a horse that's still pretty fit to turn around in 2 weeks is quite an accomplishment, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's it sure seems like it's different than when you mentioned about Victory Gallop in 1998. It just back then, I think most people went from the Derby to the Preakness and didn't think about it. But today, you have people, trainers and owners, really trying to hone in and create that big race for their horse and skipping races to hone in to try to get their best effort. And so it does make it a little bit more challenging as far as putting the field together by the racetracks, for sure.
And you mentioned that, and when you were back in your training days, I mean, there was something. I don't want to say pride. It was just the way people did it. You had a lot of races coming in and a 3-year-old season coming into the Derby. We don't see that much anymore. Nobody had like 5-6 week layoffs before the Derby. And like you said, you kind of, if you were in the Derby, if there was any way to go, you kept going to the Preakness. What are some of the changes you've noticed just in training in general in 20 years?
Well, I think that that's the biggest, is that the time between races. I think people typically allude to soundness as the reason, but it's quite honestly it's a decision. I think 90% of your horses are healthy enough to run back. They just don't choose not to, and I think that. People are, with the age of technology that we've had in the last 20 years, I think people are noticing their stats a whole lot more. If you're not 20% win percentage trainer, you take it on the chin. So I think you're being a lot more careful where you run your horses. I think that's a big part of it.
As far as like with WinStar Farm, and you're in charge of the racing operation out there, and congratulations, by the way, what success you guys have had. I mean,
Well, thank you so much. It's a testament to our owner and his willingness to play at a high level, and I don't care if you're if you're WinStar Farm or you're the Los Angeles Dodgers or the New York Yankees, or you've got to be able to have a guy who's willing to participate and to play at a high level and want to compete there, because that makes all the difference. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity, and I completely appreciate the work that they do on a different level, because we have a real advantage there.
When you get at the first of the year, like you have a horse like Improbable, and you have partners with WinStar Farm in Improbable, how much say do you have? How does it work out? How do you work out something with, say, in this case, of Bob Baffert, who's training, or whatever trainer you're working with? Do you kind of map out a schedule, or at least a hope of what's going to happen that year for the horse?
Yeah, I mean, look, you cater to the strengths of the personnel that you have in place, and I'm very fortunate to be able to hire the best trainers in the business, and we use Todd Pletcher, we use Bob Baffert, Bill Mott. All three of them had multiple entries in the Kentucky Derby. That's kind of where our focus is, and my background with training horses gives me a little bit of a unique perspective, and I think a level of trust that those guys know that they can talk to me on a level that might be different than talking to somebody who doesn't know as much about the business. So that's a real advantage as well. And I've got to be careful, Kenny, not to try to train those horses, but actually manage and work with those guys, and remember that on any given day they could out-train me 20-1. So I'm learning all the time as well. I know one thing: I'd be a whole lot better trainer if I went back today and started training again than I was then, because I've learned so much by having horses with Todd and Bob and Bill.
Well, you had a great career, I think, Elliot. Talking with Elliot Walden, if you could go back, since you brought it up, if you could go back, is there a thing or two that you've learned that you would have incorporated if we could go in the Wayback Machine to 99 and 2000 or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think a few things, and this might bore the people listening, but I used to jog quite a bit, and I think horses don't need to jog as much. And we used to gallop them a bit further, typically 1.5 miles. I see these guys galloping them 1.1 miles, 1.8 miles a lot of times, keeping them a little fresher. A lot of those guys that we have now, Todd and Bob especially, want to trade for speed. They want to have their horses get in the race early. They want to be able to save ground by being in front instead of behind and coming around. And I think some of that's accomplished by how they manage them day to day, and the shorter gallops and keeping them a little crisper is a way to do that. So there's in certain situations there would be things that I would do differently.
Does Bob Baffert ever bring up the 98 Belmont Stakes when Victory Gallop denied Real Quiet the Triple Crown? I mean, just in passing.
Oh yeah, we talk about it every now and then, but he always talks about it in Bob is a guy who really never looks back. I mean, he is always looking forward. If he gets beat, which is not that often. I mean, he's always on point with his horses, but he's looking to the next race. I mean, he is never worried about winning or losing and looking back. So, but we joke about it all the time, and he'll do it in a way that I think more to compliment me and be nice to me than anything else, because it was a great rivalry, and I think looking back on those times, I didn't appreciate it at the time because it was so busy, focused in. But looking back on it now, it was a super rivalry that was good for racing, and the way it ended worked out okay for both of us.
And you were on one leg at that time, I believe, right? You were on crutches.
I was.
Basketball injury, because probably, I'm just going to say this, and I don't think nobody's going to dispute me, that the best basketball playing racing operation CEO in the country is Elliot Walden. I believe that.
Well, it might be the only one.
Well, I don't know. You may be, but I mean, I don't know who's going to post with you. I mean, you're a big guy. You could take anybody inside.
Well, I'd sure try.
You had, growing up playing basketball, your father is so well known and respected in this business. The Walden family, everybody knows him in the racing business. I guess was there any choice that you were going to be something other than a trainer or be involved in the business as you are now?
I tell you, it was something that I really loved from the beginning, and grew up on a farm here in Midway, and my dad had a farm, and I guess I could have gone that way, but I was always attracted to the racetrack and the energy and the competitiveness of it, and so that's what I basically left the farm life and left Lexington for 20 years and moved to Louisville, and because at that time Churchill Downs was where you needed to be because they had the most racing days, and so we locally planted ourselves in the Louisville community and enjoyed that and just enjoyed training. But when the time came to come back to the farm, it was a completely different farm than what I was used to. I mean, my dad had 300 acres and 25 broodmares, and we've got 2,500 acres and 200 broodmares and 20 stallions. My dad had 3. So it's more like a racetrack. It's always moving here at WinStar. It's always something going on. It's high energy, and that's so from that standpoint, I really like it.
Before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Justify and what he meant to you, to WinStar, and to racing in general, and it was such a treat to cover him last year.
Well, it's just, I mean, to think about, the history of horse racing, and to be a part of that with Justify, and I remember Kenny Trout, being the eternal optimist that he is, always saying that we're going to win a Triple Crown one day, and I kind of you're dreaming,
yeah,
because it's just so hard to do, and to be. I'm just humbled, and everybody here is humbled to be a part of that, and have such appreciation for the horse, for Justify, and what he did, what he accomplished in such a short period of time. I wish we could have finished the year out the way that we had started it, but it wasn't meant to be, and I'm a firm believer that things work out the way they're supposed to. And so whether it's getting beat a neck in the Kentucky Derby 2 years in a row or Justify winning the Triple Crown on the other end, things work out the way they're supposed to. So I don't look back on his short career, but I do look back with appreciation, and to see everything that he accomplished in how he captured the racing world, and how he did things that haven't been done before, with the Apollo curse and running at 3, and you even see that this year in the muddle of things, and he wouldn't have had to worry about an inquiry, because he was 3 in front the whole way.
Right, that's the truth. He was amazing to me. I don't think I've ever seen a horse that got bigger with each race, Elliot, and I mean bigger and muscular. He looked like he was just like a linebacker out there.
And Bob said, he started out the Triple Crown as a baby, and he finished it as a man. That he muscled up and he hardened up, and just about the time we got to the Belmont, he really looked just toned, and he is a big horse, and I can't wait to see his babies. We've got 12 mares going to him, and just looking forward to the future.
And you gave him the name Justify, I believe.
We did. We did. We do try to name horses biblically when we can. Not all of them, but when the opportunity presents itself, and Justify is in reference to being justified by your faith, and so it was just a neat story how God blessed us with a special horse, and it's not that we had favor that a lot of people don't have. It's just it worked out that way, and I think that hopefully God was honored with the name, and he certainly is a special horse.
Well, we'll never see anything like that again, I don't think, what he did in 111 days, and it was such a treat. And Elliot, I know you got to go to Baltimore. Best wishes up there with Improbable. I will see you around the track this week.
Look forward to it, Kenny.
All right. Thank you. Elliot Walden, the president and CEO of the racing operations at WinStar Farm. What a powerhouse they are. And they have Improbable this week. We'll be back with more on the Horse Racing Show right after this.